mind is absolutely blown. Stay tuned and watch this video. Wow, what I find on Ancestry.com about my family. Amazing. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's International Carl doing another video for you. This one's a bit of a special video because today in England, it is Armistice Day. And what is Armistice Day? And Armistice Day actually is the celebration of the ending of World War I, which ended at 11/11 on November 11th. So it's celebrated on that. As a matter of fact, I actually for World War II, I actually went to France on 10 years ago, actually to this day. I was on Normandy Beach, and here's a picture of me on Normandy Beach right now, actually, 10 years ago. Interesting time because 10 years ago to this day, my grandmother was dying of cancer. She was terminally ill at the time. And so I was just waiting the call for her impending death. And, you know, it's been 10 years, you know, she is still heavily on my mind and in my heart. And I still hope that she's proud of me and all of that I have accomplished. But this video is not about her per se. It's about my family history. Because if you are new to my channel, you wouldn't have seen this, but for those that have followed my channel, you have seen that I've posted kind of little spoilers here and there about my family history. I have been filming and creating and building out my family history tree, thanks to Ancestry.com. And that's what I'm going to talk about in this video, so come with me on that journey now. Let's talk about my family history. And let's talk about how Ancestry.com works. So this is a pretty interesting thing because we're going to get into how my family actually served in World War I, World War II, and also in the Civil War. And so it's a bit of a story that makes you sad. It's a story that makes you proud. And it's just a story of an American family who has to deal with being Black in America back in these times. So let's get into it right here. So I'm gonna go down my father side of the family, and that's how I'm gonna get to some of these records, and it's pretty interesting. So one thing for me and my family is that my grandfather, who only died a couple years ago, his name is Benjamin Franklin Lewis III, which I didn't know at the time. He was just always my grandfather. And I didn't know that he was actually the third. And he has several brothers, several sisters, some of which are probably watching this video now. And I'm certain one of my cousins is watching this in Las Vegas. So I want to say hi to them as they watch this video. But what's interesting is that I got to meet my great grandfather, Benjamin Franklin Lewis II, or Jr. And I met him in like 1996, 1997. As a matter of fact, as I think about this story, I met him in Las Vegas at my great aunt's house, who could be watching this video right now with my cousin in that house. We were there. The reason I remember this is because it was around the time Tupac had died. I don't know why, it's ingrained in me, but he was there. And I remember seeing him and I was like, man, he's very light skinned, but he looks like and favors my grandfather. As a matter of fact, here's a picture of him on the screen right now, as you can see. And if we were going back in history into the 1850s and stuff, you know, he would be classified as mulatto, that term, which really kind of means very light-skinned Black person. And so, but his father is Benjamin Franklin Lewis I, or Sr. And as you build your ancestry tree up, an interesting thing takes place. You start to put in these names, and then you start looking into the census data. And for those that don't know, a census is conducted every 10 years in the United States. And what it does is it just catalogs and records everybody that lives in the United States and their color, their job, their relation to the head of the household, and things of that nature. And interesting things start to take place when you do that. So I look into the 1940 census. I'm able to put in my grandfather, his brothers, his sisters, you know, his father, put those names in there, which is clearly Benjamin Franklin Lewis Jr. or the second. But then as you go further, you know, you get to like the 1920s, the 1910s, you're still looking for these names and you find them in the census data. And that's where I find Benjamin Franklin Lewis the first. And the interesting thing is I find his World War I draft card, which should be on the screen right now. And so it gives you a sense of pride because who is Benjamin Franklin Lewis? Here's a picture of him right now. But let's remember that he's the son of a slave. And who does he list as his father? Or how do I find his father? Is I use more census data. I get to the 1900 census. And in the 1900 census, I'm able to see that he is related to the head of the household, Robert Lewis. But there's a woman there who says that's Robert Lewis's wife. And it's an interesting anomaly or a question that takes place because that's not Benjamin Franklin's mother. And how do I know this? Well, because I know Benjamin Franklin was born in 1883, thereabouts. However, when you go look to the 1860s, 1870s, about Robert Lewis, one thing that comes up is I find his actual marriage certificate. Imagine that. Married to Diane Curtis. On the screen, he married her on November 17, 1876. Actually in the house, if I can read this cursive. It's hard to read on the screen, but if you take your time, you can see that he was married to this woman in 1876. So do the math. Benjamin is born in 1883. So clearly that's his wife and that's his mother. And you piece that story together. And it's interesting details about my family. Another thing that comes up is that I find in one of the census data, since I'm pulling up Robert Lewis and I'm looking for Robert Lewis, I actually find his Civil War enlistment papers. So it's very interesting because it gives you a sense of pride is that Robert is born a slave. Clearly he's born a slave. He's born in 1848 in Kentucky. But when he had a chance for his freedom, he fought for it. And he enlisted for 3 years into the Union Army. And that gives you a sense of pride. And you can see from these papers that he was 17 years old. He was 5'6". He was light-skinned or quote unquote mulatto. And it gives me a sense of pride to know that even though he was born into bondage, even though he was listed as a servant or a house servant, so he clearly worked in the house as a slave, there's interesting things that follow up when you look into these census data and you see that he fought for his freedom and he got his freedom when he had the chance. But when you look at census data, another interesting thing comes up. They ask you questions. Can you read? Can you write? And guess what? Robert Lewis can read and can write. Benjamin Sr., he can read, he can write. Other interesting things that come out of these census data is what kind of work did they do? Did they own a house? They owned property. So it gives you a sense of pride to say that these people, my ancestors, when they got a chance for their freedom, they fought for their freedom. When they had a chance to serve the country in World War I and in World War II, mind you, there's other family members and other brothers of Benjamin Franklin who served in World War II and nephews that served in World War II. But it's interesting that they serve our country, even though they are the direct descendants of slaves, that they still fought and served for their country. So it's a sense of pride. So I don't look at it as being sad and shameful, but just recognize what slavery is and was. It was an awful thing. It actually leads into this critical race theory that's going crazy in America for some reason. For some reason, they don't want to talk about slavery as slavery. It's an economic model. It's pretty offensive to say that, but that's neither here nor there. I'm talking about my family. I'm talking about Armistice Day. I'm talking about taking time out of my day to actually remember my ancestors who fought for their freedom, fought for their country, and ultimately survived and built a legacy. Can you believe it? Would Robert Lewis believe that his great-great-great-grandson is living and working in amazing? So without further ado, I'm going to end this video here. I'm going to thank you for watching. And I'm going to say, like always, click right here to subscribe to the channel and click right here to actually watch another one of my videos. Thank you very much.